The fluorescent lights of the pharmacy hummed with a low, annoying buzz that seemed to match the pounding headache Sophia was already trying to ignore. It was a typical Friday afternoon in the city, but for Sophia, it felt like the end of a very long marathon. Outside the glass doors, the world was rushing by. People in fancy cars were honking their horns, and tourists were taking pictures of the Hollywood Walk of Fame, laughing and enjoying their vacation. But inside that store, the air was heavy with the smell of antiseptic cleaner and ground coffee, and the mood was anything but relaxed. Sophia stood near the entrance for a moment, adjusting the strap of her heavy shoulder bag. She looked tired, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't really fix. Her shoes were old and a little bit worn at the heels, and her jacket had seen better seasons, but she held her head up high. She had a mission. She wasn't there to browse the expensive makeup aisles or to buy the latest magazines. She had a list in her pocket, and every item on it was absolutely necessary. It was basic medicine for a persistent cold she had been fighting, a few simple groceries like bread and milk, and a small bottle of vitamins. Nothing fancy. Just things to keep her going. The store was packed. It seemed like everyone in the neighborhood had decided to run their errands at the exact same time. The lines at the checkout counters were snaking back toward the shelves, filled with people tapping their feet and checking their expensive smartwatches. Everyone looked impatient. Everyone was in a hurry. Sophia took a deep breath, steeled her nerves, and walked toward the back of the store to grab what she needed. As she walked, she couldn't help but notice the contrast between her life and the people around her. A woman in front of her was throwing things into her cart without even looking at the price tags: fancy cheeses, imported chocolates, expensive skincare. She moved with a confidence that comes from knowing you can pay for anything without worrying. Sophia watched for a second, feeling a pang of envy, before quickly pushing the thought away. She focused on her own list. She picked up the generic brand of medicine instead of the name brand because it was $3 cheaper. She grabbed the smallest loaf of bread. She was doing the math in her head as she walked, trying to make sure she stayed within her limit. The real source of Sophia's anxiety wasn't the shopping, though. It was what was waiting for her at the end of the trip. Deep inside her heavy shoulder bag, wrapped in an old sock to stop it from jingling too loudly, was her life savings for the month. It wasn't a wad of crisp dollar bills or a shiny credit card. It was a large glass jar full of coins that she had been dumping her change into for months. Quarters, dimes, nickels, and even a few dusty pennies. It was heavy, it was awkward, and it was embarrassing. Sophia had worked hard for that money. She had worked double shifts at a diner, picking up extra hours whenever she could, serving coffee to people who didn't even look her in the eye. She had saved every single coin, promising herself that when things got tight, this jar would be her safety net. Well, things had gotten tight. Rent was due, and her hours had been cut back unexpectedly this week. The jar was broken open now, and the contents were weighing down her bag like a stone. She approached the checkout lines. There were 5 open, but all of them were long. She chose the shortest one, which happened to be manned by a cashier who looked like he would rather be anywhere else on earth. He was a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a permanent scowl etched onto his face. He was scanning items aggressively, throwing them into bags with a loud thud. Sophia waited patiently. She was 5th in line. In front of her were 4 other people. There was a businessman on his phone, loudly arguing with someone about a contract. There was an elderly lady moving slowly and counting out coupons. And there were 2 younger people, students probably, laughing and gossiping about their classes. The minutes ticked by. The line moved at a snail's pace. Every time it shuffled forward, Sophia felt the heavy coins in her bag shift and clink softly against her hip. She flinched at the sound, terrified that someone would hear the metallic noise and realize what she was about to do. She felt a bead of sweat form on her forehead. She wasn't doing anything illegal. It wasn't a crime to pay with coins. But in a world of Apple Pay and contactless cards, standing there and counting out nickels felt like walking into a fancy party wearing pajamas. It felt wrong. It felt like she was announcing to everyone, "I am struggling. I am poor." The businessman in front of her finished his call and turned around, looking annoyed at the wait. His eyes scanned Sophia, taking in her worn clothes and her tight grip on her bag. He didn't smile. He just huffed and turned back around, inching his cart closer to the person in front of him, as if trying to get away from her. It was a small gesture, but it stung. It was a reminder that she didn't fit in here, in this bright, clean world of easy commerce. One by one, the people ahead of her were served. The elderly lady with the coupons finally finished, and the students paid for their snacks with a quick tap of a card. Then, it was the businessman's turn. He threw his items on the belt: a bottle of expensive water and a pack of gum. He swiped his card, grabbed his bag, and left without a word to the cashier. Suddenly, Sophia was next. Her heart started hammering against her ribs. This was it. She took a shaky step forward and placed her items onto the black rubber conveyor belt. The generic medicine, the bread, the milk, and the vitamins. They looked small and lonely on the wide belt. The cashier didn't look up, he just sighed, a long, dramatic exhale that seemed to say, "What do you want now?" He scanned her items with practiced speed. Beep. 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 The screen flashed the total. It was exactly what she had calculated. But standing there, with the line behind her and the impatient cashier staring at her, the reality of the situation crashed down on her. She reached into her bag. Her hand touched the rough fabric of the sock hiding the coins. She could feel the cold metal beneath. She pulled the bundle out. It felt heavier now than it ever had before. The cashier watched her, his scowl deepening. Behind her, she heard a shuffle of feet. She knew there were people waiting. She knew she was about to hold everything up. But she had no choice. She untied the knot in the sock, took a deep breath, and prepared to face the judgment of the room. She didn't know that the next few minutes would change her life, or that someone very special was standing just a few feet away, watching it all happen. For now, she just tried to stop her hands from shaking. Sophia took a deep breath, trying to steady the frantic beating of her heart. She looked up at the cashier, whose name tag she couldn't read because he was looking down at his screen with such intensity. He didn't make eye contact. He just tapped his foot on the floor, a rhythmic, impatient sound that seemed to match the ticking clock on the wall. "I'm sorry," Sophia said softly. Her voice didn't sound like her own, it sounded small and weak, barely audible over the noise of the store. I'm going to pay with change. It might take a moment." The cashier didn't say a word. He didn't say that's fine or take your time. He just stopped what he was doing, leaned back against the shelf behind him, crossed his arms over his chest, and let out a heavy sigh that seemed to deflate his entire upper body. It was a sigh that said, "You are wasting my life." Sophia felt her face get hot. A flush of red crept up her neck and into her cheeks. She knew she didn't need to apologize, but the social pressure was overwhelming. In a world where people just tapped their phones and walked away in 2 seconds, She was about to become a problem. She was about to be the person everyone whispered about. She reached into the heavy bag and pulled out the large glass jar wrapped in the old sock. As she lifted it out, the weight of it surprised her, and her wrist wobbled slightly. She carefully untied the knot in the sock and poured the contents onto the black rubber counter mat. The sound was deafening in the quiet space around the register. Clink, clank, crash. It was a mountain of metal. Quarters, dimes, nickels, and a sea of pennies spilled out, rolling in every direction. Some even teetered dangerously close to the edge of the counter, threatening to fall onto the floor. The cashier stared at the pile. He looked from the coins to Sophia, and then raised one eyebrow in a look of pure disbelief. He shook his head slightly, just a sharp twitch to the side, like he was trying to dislodge a fly from his ear. "I'll sort them," Sophia said quickly, her hands moving fast. She could feel the eyes of the people behind her burning into her back. She didn't need to turn around to know they were watching. She could sense their impatience like a physical heat radiating toward her. She began to separate the quarters from the dimes. Her fingers were clumsy, sliding awkwardly over the cold metal. 4 quarters makes $1, she whispered to herself, trying to focus on the math and not the situation. She made a stack of 4 quarters. Then another. Then another. It was slow work. Painfully slow. "Is there a problem here?" a voice boomed from behind her. Sophia froze for a split second, but she didn't turn around. She didn't want to see the look on the person's face. She could tell by the tone of the voice that it was a man. He sounded angry. He sounded like he owned the sidewalk outside and everyone on it. "Just a minute, sir," Sophia mumbled, not looking up. She pushed a stack of quarters toward the cashier. That's $5. The cashier sighed again, louder this time. He didn't pick up the money. He just looked at it, then looked at the line of people forming behind the man. "We have other customers," he said flatly. "Maybe you should have gone to a bank to exchange this." "I know," Sophia said, her voice trembling now. "I'm sorry. I'm almost done." She started counting the dimes. 10 dimes make $1. But her hands were shaking so badly that she kept dropping them. Every time a coin slipped from her fingers and hit the counter with a ding, she felt a fresh wave of embarrassment. It was like a nightmare where you are trying to run but your legs won't move. She was trying to pay, but the world wouldn't let her. Behind her, the man tapped his foot on the floor. Tap, tap, tap. Then he sighed dramatically. Then he made a tch sound with his tongue. It was a symphony of impatience, designed to make her feel small. "You have got to be kidding me," the man muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I have a meeting in 15 minutes. Why do they even let you pay with pennies? It's ridiculous." "It's legal tender," Sophia whispered to herself, trying to find her courage. But she couldn't say it out loud. She just kept her head down, tears stinging the corners of her eyes. She blinked them away furiously. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of these people. She managed to scrape together another $3 in dimes. She pushed them forward with the quarters. The cashier still hadn't entered the amount into the machine. He was just standing there, making her wait. It felt like he was punishing her. "Are you serious?" the man behind her snapped. He took a step closer, invading her personal space. She could feel his breath on her shoulder. "Can you hurry it up? Some of us actually have jobs to get to." The comment stung like a slap. Sophia gripped the edge of the counter. She did have a job. She had 2 jobs. She worked harder than this man probably ever had in his life. She worked until her feet swelled and her back ached. That's why she had coins instead of bills. But she didn't say any of that. She just felt paralyzed. She moved on to the nickels. They were the worst. Small, fiddly, and not worth much. It took forever to make $1. The line behind her was growing. She heard a woman behind the angry man ask, "What's going on up there?" "Some girl is paying for her groceries with a jar of pennies," the angry man replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Holding up the whole line. A collective groan rippled through the line. It wasn't just one person anymore, it was a crowd. They were a united front of anger and annoyance, all directed at her. Sophia felt like she was standing on a stage, naked and judged. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to melt into the floor tiles. "Look," the cashier said, leaning over the counter and pointing a finger at her. "If you don't have the money ready, you need to step aside." "I do have it," Sophia cried out, her voice cracking. "I do. I'm counting as fast as I can." She frantically swept the remaining coins into a pile. She realized she was down to the pennies. Hundreds of pennies. They were brown and dirty and looked so insignificant. She knew exactly how many she needed. She had calculated it at home, but in her panic, the numbers were getting mixed up. Was it 45 cents or 54? Her mind was a blur. "Fine," the angry man said. He threw his hands up in the air. "I'm done." He looked around for a manager, but there was no one in sight. So he turned his aggression back on her. "This is completely selfish," he said, his voice rising. "You know that, right? Your time is not more valuable than everyone else's. Go to a Coinstar machine like a normal person." Sophia's hands were shaking so hard now that she couldn't pick up a single penny. They were slipping through her fingers like water. She felt the tears she had been holding back finally spill over, tracking hot lines down her cheeks. She wiped them away with the back of her hand, smudging dirt on her face. The cashier looked at her crying face and didn't soften. If anything, he looked more annoyed. "Don't do that," he said sharply. "Don't make a scene." "I'm not trying to make a scene," Sophia sobbed. "I just need my medicine." She looked down at the pile of pennies. There were so many left. It looked like a mountain she could never climb. The angry man was huffing and puffing behind her. The cashier was glaring at her. The other customers were muttering. The pressure was crushing her. She realized with a sinking heart that she had lost count. She didn't know if she had enough or if she was short, and in that moment, standing there in her worn-out jacket, counting dirty pennies while the world judged her, she felt more alone than she had ever felt in her entire life. She just wanted to run away, but she couldn't. She was trapped by her own poverty. Sophia stood frozen, her hands hovering over the messy pile of copper and silver coins. Her vision was blurred by the tears that were now falling freely, no matter how hard she tried to blink them away. She could feel the wetness on her cheeks, hot and sticky, and she felt utterly exposed. It was a moment of pure vulnerability. She wasn't just buying medicine, she was standing there in her worn-out clothes, showing the entire world exactly how desperate she was. The man behind her didn't let up. He saw her tears, but instead of feeling pity, it seemed to make him angrier. He let out a loud, sharp tooting sound, clicking his tongue against his teeth. "Oh, great," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Now she's crying. This is just perfect. Can we get a manager over here? I want to pay for my water and leave. Sophia flinched as if he had shouted. She tried to wipe her eyes with the sleeve of her jacket, but her hands were dirty from handling the coins, leaving smudges of gray grime on her face. She looked down at the counter, trying to focus on the task, trying to find a way out of this nightmare. "Look," the cashier said, leaning forward and speaking in a cold, hard voice. He didn't look at Sophia with kindness, he looked at her like she was a nuisance. "I can't accept all these loose coins. It's against store policy to take more than $5 in change unless they are rolled. You're holding up the line." Sophia's head snapped up. What she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But, it's money. It's American money. You have to take it." "I don't have to do anything," the cashier snapped back. He pointed a finger at the long line of people behind her. "Look at them. Do you think they want to wait for you to count out 100 pennies, go to a bank, get some bills, and come back?" The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. A bank. She didn't have a bank account that allowed her to just walk in and exchange coins without paying a fee she couldn't afford. She didn't have time to go to a bank anyway. She needed the medicine now. She felt the walls of the store closing in on her. The bright lights seemed to get brighter, the noises louder. "She can't pay," the man behind her announced to the rest of the line, throwing his hands up. "Did you hear that? She's wasting our time with money they won't even take." "Unbelievable." "Seriously," a woman's voice chimed in from further back. "I have a roast in the oven. Can you just let her step aside?" "Just step aside, miss," the cashier said, making a shooing motion with his hand, as if he were swatting away a fly. "Let the real customers pay." Sophia felt a fresh wave of humiliation wash over her. Real customers. The phrase rang in her ears. She was a real person. She worked hard. She mattered. But in this moment, under the harsh fluorescent lights, she didn't feel real. She felt like a ghost, something unpleasant that everyone wished would just disappear. She looked at the pile of coins again. She had counted out most of the quarters and dimes. She knew she was close. She frantically pushed the stacks toward the cashier. "Please," she begged, her voice trembling so badly it squeaked. "I have enough here. I know I do. It's $12.50. I have that much. Please just take it." The cashier looked at the stacks she had pushed forward. They were messy piles, not neat rolls. He sighed, a long, rattling sigh that showed his complete lack of respect. "Fine," he grumbled. "But if you're short, I'm putting everything back. And you're still holding up the line." Sophia nodded quickly. Okay. Thank you." She went back to the pennies. Her hands were shaking so violently now that she could barely pick them up. She tried to count to 10, but her vision was swimming. 1, 2, 3. She dropped a penny. It rolled off the counter and hit the floor with a tiny, pathetic ting. The man behind her laughed. It was a cruel, short laugh. "Graceful," he muttered. Sophia ignored him and crouched down to grab the penny, but as she reached for it, she felt a sharp pain in her lower back from standing for so long. She let out a small groan of pain but grabbed the coin and stood back up. She was sweating now. Her hair was sticking to her forehead. She felt disgusting. She finally managed to scrape together the rest of the change. She pushed the entire messy heap toward the cashier, the neatish stacks, the handfuls of dimes, and the piles of pennies. "That's everything," she said, her voice breathless. That should cover it. The cashier stared at the mountain of metal. He didn't start counting it. He just stared at it, then at her. You want me to count that? He asked. It's all there. Sophia cried out, frustration rising in her chest. I counted it. I'm not your personal banker, the cashier said coldly. He picked up a handful of the coins and dropped them back into the pile, making a mess of her careful sorting. I can't process this. It's going to take me 20 minutes to count this mess. The man behind her slammed his hand on the counter. The loud bang made Sophia jump. That's it? He yelled. I'm done waiting. This is absurd. You have a card, you have a phone, use them like a civilized person. I don't have a card. Sophia screamed back, turning to face him for the first time. Her eyes were red, her face wet with tears. I'm broke. Okay, I'm broke. I don't have any money in the bank. This is all I have. The silence that followed her outburst was deafening. The entire line went quiet. The cashier stopped moving. The man looked at her, his mouth slightly open, surprised by her sudden burst of anger. But the surprise didn't last long. His expression quickly turned from shock to disgust. He looked her up and down, sneering at her old jacket and her tear-stained face. Then maybe you shouldn't be shopping here, he said, his voice low and cutting. If you can't afford it, don't come in here and make everyone else's life miserable. Go to a thrift store. Go to a food bank. Just get out of the way. The words were cruel, intentionally designed to hurt. They struck Sophia right in the center of her chest. It was the exact fear she carried around with her every day, that she didn't belong, that she was less than everyone else because she was poor. Hearing it spoken out loud, by a stranger in a crowded store, broke something inside her. The cashier took the opportunity to chime in. He's right. You're blocking the flow. Please, just leave. Come back when you can pay properly. Sophia looked at the medicine sitting on the counter. It was right there. Just a few feet away. She needed it. But she couldn't fight the cashier, and she couldn't fight the man, and she couldn't fight the whole world. She felt defeated. Completely and utterly defeated. She reached out with trembling hands to scoop the coins back into the sock. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. Every coin she picked up felt like a heavy stone. It felt like she was picking up her own failure. Sorry, she whispered, though she didn't know why she was apologizing. I'm so sorry. She turned to leave, keeping her head down, not wanting to see the smug look on the man's face or the judgment in the eyes of the other customers. She just wanted to get out. She wanted to run home and hide under her covers and never come out. As she turned, her foot caught on the heavy bag. She stumbled slightly, clutching the sock of coins to her chest like a baby. A few coins escaped, bouncing on the linoleum floor and rolling away under the candy rack. Just go. The cashier shouted, losing his patience completely. Go. Sophia walked toward the exit, her head bowed low. She could feel the tears flowing harder now, blinding her. She felt like everyone was staring at her back, laughing at her. She felt like the biggest failure in the world. She was leaving without her medicine. She was leaving with nothing but shame. She reached for the door handle, ready to step back out into the cold afternoon, feeling more alone than she ever had in her life. She didn't see the man standing a few people back in the line. He was quiet. He hadn't said a word. He was wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes and a simple black jacket. He had been watching the whole thing. He had seen the way her hands shook. He had heard the cruelty in the man's voice and the indifference of the cashier. And as Sophia turned to leave, he finally stepped forward, his hand moving toward his pocket. The automatic doors were just a few steps away. Sophia could see the blurry world outside through the smeared glass, the cars driving past, people going about their happy lives. She felt like she was walking through deep water, every step heavy and slow. The sound of the angry man's voice was still ringing in her ears, repeating the words food bank and get out. She tightened her grip on the sock full of coins, the metal edges digging into her palm, grounding her in her humiliation. She was almost at the exit when a voice cut through the noise. It wasn't loud, but it was firm and deep. It carried a weight that made the air in the store feel different. Hey! Wait a minute. Sophia didn't stop at first. She thought it was the cashier coming to yell at her some more, or the angry man demanding an apology. She just wanted to be gone. But then she heard footsteps. Not the fast, aggressive steps of an angry person, but calm, steady strides. "Don't go," the voice said. Sophia paused. Her hand was on the metal bar of the door handle. She hesitated, then slowly turned around, expecting to face more anger. Instead, she saw a man walking away from the line and toward the counter. He was dressed simply, wearing a dark hoodie under a worn leather jacket and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He didn't look like a movie star in that moment, he just looked like a regular guy who had had enough. He walked right past the angry businessman, ignoring him completely, and stepped up to the counter where Sophia's abandoned items were still sitting. The angry man looked confused. He looked at the cashier, then at the man in the cap. "Excuse me," the angry man sputtered. "I was next." "Are you cutting in line?" The man in the cap didn't even look at him. He kept his eyes on the cashier. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a wallet. It was a simple, battered leather wallet. He opened it and took out a single, crisp $20 bill. "Just take it," he said to the cashier, his voice calm and quiet but somehow commanding everyone's attention. "Ring it up." The cashier blinked, completely stunned. He looked from the money to the man, then back to the coins scattered on the counter. "But, she left," the cashier mumbled, his aggressive posture melting away into confusion. "And she didn't have enough change." "She has enough," the man said, placing the $20 bill gently on the counter next to the pile of Sophia's coins. "This covers it? And keep the change." The angry man behind him let out a huff of disbelief. "Are you serious? You're paying for her? That's ridiculous." She was holding up the line. Now, the man in the cap turned around. He finally looked at the angry man. He didn't look angry himself. He just looked tired. He looked at the man with a sad, serious expression, shaking his head slightly. "Is it really worth it?" the man in the cap asked softly. "Look at her. Look at what you're doing. We're all just trying to get through the day. Why make it harder for someone?" The angry man opened his mouth to argue, to throw another insult, but he stopped. The way the stranger said it, so direct, so human, took the wind out of his sails. He looked at Sophia, who was still standing by the door, crying silently. For a second, the anger flickered out of his eyes, replaced by a flash of shame. He looked away, mumbling something under his breath, and shuffled his feet. The cashier, seeing the money, snapped back into action. He didn't want any more trouble. He quickly snatched up the $20 bill and scanned Sophia's items. Beep. Beep. The total cleared. He began shoving the medicine and food into a plastic bag. The man in the cap picked up the bag. He didn't hand it to the cashier. He turned and walked over to Sophia. She was frozen in place, her hand still on the door handle, watching him like he was a ghost. She couldn't believe what was happening. "Here," he said, holding out the bag to her. Sophia looked at the bag, then at him. She recognized him then. The beard, the sad eyes, the kind smile that had been in a million movies. It was Keanu Reeves. But standing there in the fluorescent light of a drugstore, he seemed smaller, more real. He wasn't a character on a screen, he was just a man holding a bag of groceries. I can't take this," Sophia stammered, wiping her eyes with her sleeve again. "I don't have. I can't pay you back." "You don't have to pay me back," Keanu said softly. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. "Just please, take it. You need this." "But my coins," Sophia said, gesturing weakly back to the counter. "I left them." Keanu glanced over at the mess of pennies and quarters on the counter. "Keep them," he said, looking back at her. "Buy yourself a coffee later. Or a treat. You deserve it." The tears started flowing again, but this time they weren't tears of shame. They were tears of relief. A huge weight lifted off her chest. The medicine she needed was safe. The food was secure. The crushing anxiety of the last 10 minutes vanished, replaced by a warm glow of gratitude. "Thank you," Sophia whispered, her voice cracking. "Thank you so much. You don't know how much this means." Keanu nodded. "I think I have an idea," he said simply. "We've all been there. Sometimes you just need someone to help you stand up straight." He gently placed the bag in her hand. His fingers brushed hers, and his grip was firm and reassuring. "Don't let them get to you," he said, glancing briefly at the angry man and the cashier. "You're doing a good job. Just keep going." Sophia held the bag tight against her chest. For the first time that day, she felt a sense of dignity returning. She wasn't a nuisance. She wasn't a failure. She was a human being who had just been shown a massive act of kindness by a stranger who owed her nothing. The store was completely silent now. Everyone was watching. The angry man was looking at his shoes. The cashier was standing awkwardly by the register. Even the people in the back of the line had stopped whispering. It was one of those rare moments where the world stops spinning, and everyone just witnesses something pure. Keanu didn't want a round of applause. He didn't want to make a speech. He just wanted to make sure Sophia was okay. He gave her a small, reassuring nod, then turned and walked back to where he had been standing in line. He reached down, picked up a bottle of water and a protein bar from a nearby shelf, the only items he had come to buy, and placed them on the counter. Sophia watched him, her heart full. She wanted to say something else, something profound, but there were no words. So she just mouthed "thank you" one more time. He saw it, touched his hand to his heart, and turned his attention back to the cashier, ready to pay for his own things. The mood in the store had shifted completely. The hostility had evaporated, replaced by a lingering sense of awe and a bit of guilt. The angry man shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. The cashier scanned Keanu's items with a newfound respect, treating him with a care he hadn't shown Sophia. As Sophia finally pushed the door open and stepped out into the afternoon air, she felt the sun on her face. It felt warmer than before. She took a deep breath, the first real breath she had taken all day. She clutched the bag of medicine and food, and the heavy sock of coins in her pocket, and walked down the street. She was still tired, she was still broke, and she still had a long way to go, but she didn't feel alone anymore. She walked with her head a little higher, knowing that kindness was real, and that sometimes, the world surprises you when you need it most. The silence inside the pharmacy hung in the air, heavy and thick, like the atmosphere after a thunderstorm. Even the hum of the refrigerators seemed to quiet down. Everyone was frozen, staring at the spot where Sophia had just been standing, and then at the man in the baseball cap who stood calmly at the counter. The angry businessman shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Suddenly, he didn't look so big anymore. He looked at the cashier, then at his phone, then at the floor. The anger had drained out of him, replaced by a creeping, uncomfortable feeling in his gut. He realized that everyone in the line was looking at him, but not with admiration. They were looking at him with judgment. He was the villain in this story now, and he knew it. The cashier cleared his throat, breaking the quiet. He looked down at the $20 bill Keanu had placed on the counter, then up at the customer. He didn't sigh. He didn't roll his eyes. He actually looked a little bit scared that he might have made a mistake in treating the previous customer so poorly. "Your total is $4.50, the cashier said softly, his voice lacking the earlier bite. Keanu nodded. He tapped his card on the machine. Beep. Approved. It was the fastest transaction the cashier had processed all day. As the cashier bagged the bottle of water and the protein bar, Keanu turned slightly to the side. He didn't look angry, but he looked the angry businessman right in the eye. "It's a hard world for everyone right now," Keanu said, his voice low and calm, but firm enough for the man to hear clearly. "We don't have to make it harder for each other." The man opened his mouth to say something, maybe a defense or another sarcastic comment, but the words died in his throat. He looked at Keanu, really looked at him, and saw a man who was speaking from the heart. The businessman just nodded once, a jerky, awkward motion. "Yeah," he mumbled, looking away. "I guess you're right." Keanu didn't linger. He didn't wait for a thank you or an apology. He picked up his small bag, gave a small, polite nod to the cashier who was now standing up straighter, looking a bit ashamed of his earlier behavior, and walked toward the doors. Outside, the city was moving again. The traffic lights changed, cars honked, and people rushed past, oblivious to the small miracle that had just occurred inside the pharmacy. Sophia was sitting on a wooden bench a few yards away, the plastic bag resting on her lap. She wasn't crying anymore, but she was taking deep, shaky breaths, trying to calm the storm inside her chest. She opened the bag and looked inside. There was the medicine. There was the bread. There was the milk. It sounded simple, but to her, it looked like a treasure chest. She took out the bottle of medicine and held it in her hands, turning it over. It was real. She had it. She wouldn't have to go to sleep sick tonight. She wouldn't have to worry about skipping a meal. The tightness in her chest, the knot that had been there for weeks, began to loosen. She looked up and saw the automatic doors slide open. Keanu walked out. He didn't look around to see if anyone was watching. He didn't pull his phone out to check the news or post about what he had done. He just stepped out onto the sidewalk and adjusted his cap against the afternoon sun. He walked past her bench. For a second, Sophia thought about stopping him. She thought about asking for a selfie, or telling him that he was her hero, or that he had just saved her week. But as he walked by, she felt that he didn't want that. He hadn't done it for the attention. He had done it because it was the right thing to do. He was just a human being helping another human being. So, she just watched him go. He walked down the street, blending into the crowd, becoming just another person in the city. But to Sophia, he was the only thing that made sense in the world right now. Before he turned the corner, something small happened. An older woman was struggling to pull a heavy cart of groceries up the curb. Without breaking his stride, Keanu stepped over, grabbed the handle of the cart, and lifted it up onto the sidewalk for her. The woman smiled and thanked him. He smiled back, tipped his cap, and kept walking. He wasn't looking for applause. He was just moving through the world with his eyes open, leaving a trail of small kindnesses behind him. Sophia smiled on the bench. It was a real smile, one that reached her eyes. She reached into her pocket and felt the heavy sock of coins. They were still there. She didn't have to spend them. She realized she could actually buy herself a coffee now, just like he had said. A small luxury. A moment of joy. But more than that, she felt a change inside herself. The shame that had weighed her down earlier was gone. She stood up, swinging the bag of groceries over her shoulder. She felt lighter. The world hadn't changed. There would still be rude cashiers and angry people, and rent would still be due next week, but she felt stronger now. She knew that even in the middle of a bad day, kindness could appear out of nowhere. It was a comforting thought. Sophia began to walk toward the bus stop. As she walked, she saw a young student a few feet ahead of her. He had dropped his stack of books and was frantically trying to pick them up while people just walked around him, ignoring his struggle. Sophia didn't hesitate. She quickened her pace, walked over to him, and knelt down. "Here," she said, "let me help you." She gathered up his books and handed them to him. The student looked surprised, then relieved. "Oh, wow, thank you so much," he said, smiling. "I thought I was going to get trampled." "No problem," Sophia said. She dusted off her hands and smiled at him. "We've all been there." She watched the student walk away, then turned toward the bus stop. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the city streets. The air was cooling down. It was a beautiful evening. Sophia looked back at the pharmacy one last time. The lights inside were bright, the sign buzzing. She didn't know if she would ever see Keanu Reeves again. She didn't know if she would ever be able to pay him back. But as she climbed onto the bus and found a seat by the window, she made a silent promise. She promised that she would remember how this felt. She would remember that a single act of kindness could pull someone back from the edge. And whenever she saw someone struggling, whether it was with coins, or heavy bags, or just a bad day, she would try to be the one who stepped in. The bus roared to life and pulled away from the curb. Sophia looked out the window at the passing faces. Some looked tired, some looked angry, some looked happy. They were all just trying to get through the day, just like she was. And today, thanks to a stranger in a baseball cap, she was going to make it.